Hi, folks. In after the War of 1812 was over, 1815 ended, and we had the bank panic in 1819. The American people were itching to move west. There was a real desire to explore the country. Manifest Destiny was really taking hold. And it was found in the fact that we got the Northwest Territory, which included Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and other areas as well, Minnesota, parts of Minnesota. Those areas of the Northwest Territory were considered free. Now, what I mean by that is the fact that, remember, we talked about manifest destiny and the fact that people want to move west. The issue that was kind of clouding behind the scenes a little bit was slavery. And that issue was going to continue to grow as time went on to the Civil War. Well, the issue of slavery was also surrounding that Northwest Territory, and that's why it was set up as free. In other words, no slavery in those lands. So that in 1820, when Missouri wanted to become a part of the Union, the issue of slavery was going to be right smack in the middle of it all. At the same time, there was a desire to bring Maine into the Union as well. So you have this issue about what to do with Missouri. Now, James Talmadge attempted to introduce an idea called the Talmadge Amendment, which would say that no more you couldn't import slaves into the state, and the children that were born in that state would be free. A gradual attempt at emancipation. Well, there's also another thing. You've got political parties are starting to have their own changes. The Federalists had essentially disappeared. They were kind of gone. They were gone now. You had the Democrat Republicans who were dominating the place. And in the Democratic Republicans, you have certain factions. Well, in the South, the pro slavery group was very strong. In the North, they were anti-slave or pro-abolition, mainly because they saw the opportunities they had without slavery. It wasn't like they were moral superiors. But anyway, so you have this push, North and South, in terms of we need slaves, as opposed to no, we don't. James Talmadge tried to fill that void by introducing that legislation that would allow Missouri to become a state without importing new slaves. Well, the people in the South were very nervous about that, mainly because there was an actual fear that the more they're importing slaves, the fear was that these slaves, if they got to gain more and more in number, and they were already in number, that they may actually suddenly revolt. Now you're saying, why wouldn't you let them be free? They couldn't let them be free because they needed them for the economy. But at the same time, they needed to be able to keep a check on them. And so this idea of making it seem like freedom is coming soon, they thought we can't have that. So it was really a weird mixture of you can't allow slaves to have a chance of freedom, and at the same time, we need the slaves for economy. We're talking about the South, and the North saying, "Come on, we're forming the West. We need to let loose." Well, they ended up having a compromise. This guy, there's another guy that came into the picture, and I'm going to see if I can find his name here. Another guy, Talmadge's idea kind of went by the wayside. They thought that was just no support for that. But a guy, uh, there's a guy named Thomas. This guy from Illinois, and his name was Jesse Thomas. Jesse Thomas, and he had the idea. He had indentured servants. Now you have to understand the difference between indentured servants and slaves. Slaves were bought and brought over from mostly from Africa, some from Haiti. Indentured servants were people who voluntarily wanted to get over to the United States. So they agreed, you take me to the United States, I will work for you for free as a slave for 7 years. That was an indentured servant. Okay. So this guy had indentured servants. Well, he proposed that slavery be allowed in Missouri, but prohibited in the remainder of the Louisiana Purchase. And oh, I forgot to include the Louisiana Purchase. You had the Northwest Territories, you had Missouri, and you had Louisiana Purchase. That was another part of the mix. The Louisiana Purchase is where more of the fear came in that there would be the African Americans would be free because the South was desperately needing to maintain their economy. Okay, so with the Louisiana Purchase hovering out there, what are we going to do? Well, this guy came up with a solution. Says like this. He says the remainder of Louisiana Purchase north of the 36th degree 30 parallel, Missouri's southern boundary. Enough Northern congressmen came around in support of the Thomas Amendment to pass the Missouri Compromise in March of 1820. Passes the package of Missouri Compromise included the Thomas Amendment and stipulated that Maine, a free state, and Missouri, a slave state, would be admitted into the Union at the same time. This set a precedent that states would be admitted in pairs to maintain sectional balance in the Senate and the Electoral College. So the whole idea is you got to keep enough people in the Electoral College. Now, another thing you got to remember too. Remember the Constitution has a 3/5 clause, which means that African Americans were counted as 3/5 persons. That gave the southern states a little bit of see. You got to remember they're farms, they're big plantations, so their numbers were fewer. So what they did was they had to use the 3/5 person clause of the Constitution to say we have representation here with these African Americans. A cute little political trick there, right? And so you had those numbers were adding to the representation of the South, and then you had the need to get people to get Louisiana Purchase in. So the North was dominating, but the South was knocking at the door, saying, "You have to give us a little bit of leverage here too." And the Electoral College has to do with representation. If you have certain number of people in a state, take Georgia, and those numbers are a certain number, your electors are going to be based on representation and the number of senators. That's how the Electoral College works out. And see, the Electoral College was absolutely important to the South because they need as many electors as they can to keep, again, a presidential election comes along, the Electoral College votes in the president. If they find themselves overwhelmingly dominated by the North, they're going to lose everything. So they were trying to manage their Electoral College availability, whereas also knowing that there's people in the North say, we want to get rid of slavery. So it was a compromise. Not the best compromise because it squeaked by, but it was a compromise nonetheless. And it was something that allowed Missouri into the Union as a slave state, Maine as a free state, and then below 3630, there was to be no slavery. It helped, at least for right now. 1820, folks. And we haven't even got to some of the more interesting stuff. Talk to you later.